You'd think by now you would have learned, not because you're not capable, but because you've been here before. Different person, different situation, different setting, but somehow the same feeling, the same ending, the same quiet thought in your head that says, why does this keep happening to me? And if you're really honest, this isn't the first time you've asked that. So here's the question no one really wants to sit with. What if life isn't repeating itself? What if you are, not consciously, not on purpose, but quietly, underneath everything, in the way you choose, react, stay, leave, trust, doubt? There's a pattern, and it's been there longer than you think. It doesn't always show up loudly. Sometimes it looks like falling for the same type of person, just with a different face, telling yourself, this one's different. And for a while, it feels like it is, until one day, you're sitting there again thinking, I felt this before. Same emotional weight, same confusion, same slow realization, different story, same ending. Or maybe it shows up in your daily life. You say you want change. You say you want something more, but your choices quietly stay the same. You go back to what's familiar, even when it doesn't feel good, even when you know better, because familiar doesn't feel like comfort. It feels like home, even if that home was built in chaos. And this is where it gets deeper, because most of these patterns didn't start where you think they did. They started earlier, much earlier, in the way you were spoken to, in what you were shown love looked like, in what was safe and what wasn't, in what you had to become just to feel accepted. A child doesn't sit there and say, I am learning patterns that will shape my adult life. A child adapts, quietly, naturally, powerfully. They learn what gets attention, what gets approval, what gets rejected. And slowly, they build a version of themselves that fits inside that world. And then one day, they grow up, but the pattern doesn't. So now, you might find yourself overgiving in relationships because somewhere along the way, you learned love had to be earned, or staying too long in situations because leaving once didn't feel safe, or chasing validation because it was inconsistent growing up. So now your nervous system still searches for it. And here's the part people often misunderstand. This isn't about blame. It's not about pointing fingers at the past. It's about recognizing that what was learned is now being lived over and over. This is where the work of people like Carl Jung starts to quietly echo through all of this. He spoke about something simple but powerful. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Read that again slowly, because that's the entire script in one line. It feels like bad luck. It feels like coincidence. It feels like, why me? But underneath, there is a pattern that hasn't been seen clearly yet. And here's why it keeps repeating. Not because life is punishing you, not because you're getting it wrong, but because the lesson hasn't fully landed. Life doesn't shout lessons. It whispers them over and over in slightly different ways until one day you finally stop and see it. You might notice you keep attracting people who make you feel unseen. You keep ending up in situations where your voice feels small. You keep doubting yourself right at the moment you should trust yourself most. And then something shifts. Not outside, inside. You pause. And instead of asking, why does this keep happening to me? You ask, what is this trying to show me? That question changes everything. Because now you're not stuck inside the pattern. You're observing it. And that's the turning point. Not fixing everything overnight. Not becoming someone new instantly. Just seeing clearly. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And here's where we bring it into something real. Something you can actually work with. Not theory, not vague ideas. Something solid. Next time something familiar happens, not identical, but familiar in feeling, pause, just for a moment, and ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Not logically, emotionally? Does it feel like being overlooked, being misunderstood, having to prove your worth, not feeling chosen, feeling like you're too much or not enough? Don't analyze it too hard. Just notice it, because that feeling, that's the thread. Then ask, how do I normally respond to this? Do I chase, withdraw, over-explain? Shut down, try harder? That's the pattern. Now here's the shift. Not a big dramatic change, just one small difference. Instead of reacting automatically, you choose one thing differently, just one. Maybe you. Don't over-explain, don't chase, don't abandon yourself, don't stay silent. It will feel uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. And this is where most people stop, because they think, this doesn't feel like me. But what they don't realize is, it doesn't feel like you because it's not the old pattern. And the old pattern feels like home, even when it hurts. So this moment, this small shift, this uncomfortable choice, that's where the pattern starts to break. Not in one big moment, but in small, repeated awareness. And slowly, life stops repeating itself, because you stopped repeating yourself. Now here's something to sit with. Not to answer quickly, but to really feel into. If your life has been repeating in certain areas, relationships, choices, situations, then ask yourself this. What part of me is still expecting the same outcome because it still believes the same thing about me? Because underneath every pattern, there is a belief. And that belief usually sounds like, I'm not enough. I have to earn love. I don't get chosen. I have to prove myself. This is just how it is for me. And life doesn't argue with that. It reflects it. So if you change nothing else, just begin here. Notice the pattern. Notice the feeling. Notice your usual response. And then choose one small thing differently, not perfectly, not all at once. Just differently, because that's how cycles end. Not with force, but with awareness. And maybe, just maybe, the next time something familiar shows up, it won't end the same way. And that's the moment you realize you were never stuck. You were just seeing the same lesson from the same place until now. And I'll leave you with this. Something to sit with, something to answer honestly. Where in your life does something feel different on the surface, but the same underneath? That's where the pattern lives, and that's where your next step begins. As always, this has been Valkyrie. Thanks for stopping by. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others. Lanterns up, people.